Hey guys, it is a very exciting time as the 2020 MLS season is almost upon us, and thus it is time for us to look at Toronto FC's current roster and predict what their lineup going into the 2020 campaign might look like. Now, if a new designated player in Pablo Piatti and Michael Bradley being hurt going into the start of the season, it is an interesting thought experiment to think about what Greg Vanney might try with this Toronto FC roster. However, there are many clues as to what he's going to play this season, as Pablo Piatti is a left winger, which was a position of weakness for Toronto FC last season, and given that TFC made it all the way to MLS Cup playing a 4-2-3-1 type formation with wingers, it is easy to assume that they are going to yet again try to play wingers in this campaign. So for the purposes of this video, I am assuming that Toronto FC is going to be playing some sort of 4-2-3-1, and also for this, usually I would do the best possible roster that Toronto FC could field, but given that Michael Bradley is going to be out until June, I'm going to write this roster without Michael Bradley in it, and then I'll basically point out where I think Michael Bradley will fit in once he returns. So to start off, we're going to work from the goaltender up, and I'm going to predict what I think the best possible 11 that Greg Vanney could pick for his starting lineup are, and then I'm going to look at midfielders, defenders, and strikers and see kind of the depth chart behind them, who I think on the bench that I'm not picking to the starting 11 is going to get the most playing time and down from there. So to start off with, in net, it's an absolute no-brainer, Quentin Westberg. Westberg was a superstar last season for Toronto FC. He kept them in so many games early on when they just couldn't get anything together, and then once the team finally gelled, he was just a rock in net, and all throughout the playoff run he was just making spectacular saves the whole way through, and without Quentin Westberg, Toronto FC does not make it to MLS Cup last season. So Quentin Westberg, he just signed a new contract extension, has to be the starting goaltender for Toronto FC going into this year. Moving on to the defenders. 4-back for Toronto FC. At left back, I'm putting Aro. Now, Aro is a very interesting case because naturally he is a right back, but Toronto FC this season is very weak in the left back position. In fact, I think that our weakest position right now is left back. Justin Morrow last year took a very obvious step back. He was injured for a lot of it, and thus Aro had to come in and play a lot of games at left back. And our backup left back, Ashton Morgan, was not re-signed over the summer. And in fact, last year, many times Greg Vanney played Aro at left back over Ashton Morgan. So I think Aro will be the man to start at left back for TFC this season, because we just really don't have very many other options in that spot. And as much as I hope Justin Morrow could regain his 2016-2017 form, I think just his age and his injuries are starting to catch up with him, and he's not really an elite starter in MLS anymore. However, I would not be surprised if at some point in the coming few weeks, Toronto FC did sign another left back, because if there's one position that they desperately need another player in, it's on the left side on defense. The two center backs for this season, pretty easy choice. Chris Mavinga and Omar Gonzalez. They were Greg Vanney's two obvious first-choice defenders for the end of last season. Mavinga's been Greg Vanney's first-choice defender since 2017, basically. And Omar Gonzalez, since he came in, if he didn't get hurt, you can tell Greg Vanney would have loved to play him through the entire playoff run. So these two obvious, easy choices to be the starting center backs. And at right back, Richie Laryea. Such a pleasant surprise for TFC last season, Richie Laryea was. Canadian international from Toronto. He was signed to Orlando City and never really turned into a solid MLS player there, and was placed on waivers at the beginning of last year. TFC pick him up, and not only do they turn him into a serviceable MLS player, they turn him into Canada's starting right back for the national team. Laryea just had an absolutely fantastic breakout season last year. Hopefully he can continue that mojo into this year, and for right now, he has to be the starting choice right back. Now for the two more back central midfielders of the 4-2-3-1 formation. We have Liam Fraser and Marky Delgado. Liam Fraser is a young player who really started to take some big strides in his development last year. He showed in Michael Bradley-less games last year that Toronto FC is not screwed in the CDM position in a post-Michael Bradley world. Liam Fraser has shown that he's a very competent CDM, And I think that Michael Bradley being hurt to start the season this year might be a godsend for Frazier, because I think that until June, with Michael Bradley out, Frazier has a solid spot in the starting 11, and he is going to just prove that he can be a starter in MLS and is TFC's CDM of the future. Now, of course, once Michael Bradley comes back, this is the spot where I have him sliding into, as I think TFC will only play one true CDM for the season, and this other midfield position will be more of a roaming forward guy, someone who can get forward more. So once Bradley comes back, I think Frazier gets relegated to the bench, but I think he'll be a very active substitute. The other back midfielder, I have Marky Delgado. Delgado has just been nothing but solid since he came to Toronto FC. He is a very good, calming presence in the midfield, and especially given the formation that we play with Pozuelo being the main attacking midfielder, I don't see any of the other midfielders on this team, notably De Leon or Osorio, taking over a starting role regularly from Delgado as a more further back midfielder. However, this I think is the spot in Toronto FC's 11 that has the most potential for rotation, as you could have Delgado, Osorio, De Leon all being kind of rotated into the starting 11 based off of what you need that day given the opposition. But overall, as the most solid all-around midfielder Toronto FC has right now, I think Marky Delgado takes this spot more often than not. Now, to the two wingers and the more attacking midfielder, at left wing, no question, it has to be Pablo Piatti. The new designated player signing was brought in as a true left winger. I don't see anyone else possibly taking this spot. I don't think Jacob Schaffelberg is at the level of competing with a designated player just yet, so this one has to go to Piatti. Same deal with the center attacking midfielder role, it has to be Pozuelo. You don't sign designated players not to start them. Pozuelo is such a good creator. Attacking-wise, he is a fantastic setup man, and he's going to feed Jozy Altidore for so many goals this year, and he's probably going to score a bunch himself. And then at right wing, Tsubasa Endo. And I know what you're thinking. One of these is not like the other. But last year, Toronto FC had been looking for wingers to play all season. In the summer window, they went out and they got Benezet and Gallardo to play the wings. And after they got both of those, the guy who established himself as Toronto FC's right winger was Tsubasa Endo. Out of nowhere came from an attacking midfielder to a very serviceable winger in MLS, had a breakout season, and I think he's deserved a shot to be Toronto FC's starting right winger to start the season off. He might not stay there, he's going to need to continue the amazing form and development he showed last season, but after what he showed in the end of last season in the playoff run, I want to see Endo in the starting lineup. And then at striker, who else would it be but Jozy Altidore? Yes, he does have some health issues. Yes, he does get hurt a lot. But whenever Jozy Altidore is in Toronto FC's lineup, he scores. He is a very consistent goal scorer in MLS, designated player striker. He is the complete package when he's healthy, and is by far and away Toronto FC's #1 striker. So that's what I think the starting 11 is going to be. Now I'm going to look at the subs and rank them based off of how much play time they're going to get and how big of an impact they are going to be for this squad. Okay, so a lot of stuff here. I'm just going to loop around up like that based off of position. So in net, obviously Alex Bono is going to be the #2 goalie. No questions there. Next off, wingers. Now, keep in mind, the wingers and the midfielders can be kind of interchangeable because in a pinch, De Leon and Osorio have both played the wing. So both of them could end up playing wing there, and their midfield ranking will reflect that. But for natural wingers, I think we're going to have Erickson. Gallardo is going to be into games here and there. I feel like he may be able to have a much better season this year and really establish himself in the starting 11. But for right now, I think he's going to be used at least to start the season as a substitute. And really, based off of his performance, he could either end up in the starting 11 or into not playing at all. It's really up to him at this point. Next, Jacob Schaffelberg. Schaffelberg last season, I really liked. He was fantastic at creating chances. He just could not seem to find the back of the net. and he had a couple of great chances where he was absolutely robbed. He really should have had at least 1 or 2 last season. So Schaffelberg, I want to see a lot more of him. His playtime got cut down a lot by TFC signing Piatti, who plays the same position as him, but I think we will see quite a bit of Schaffelberg this season, and I really am excited to see more of him. Then, Griffin Dorsey. Dorsey's a young player who we picked up in the 2019 Super Draft. He definitely has potential to be an MLS player, though I'm not sure in this lineup how much playtime he's going to get. I think we'll probably see him for sure a couple of times this season, but I don't think we're going to be seeing a ton of Griffin Dorsey this year. And in last, 15-year-old Jaquil Marshall-Rutty. Rutty is a very interesting prospect that Toronto FC has picked up. I've heard some people are saying that he is the best 2003 born player in all of CONCACAF, which is a huge bar to put on such a young kid's head. Being signed at 15, there's already Alphonso Davies comparisons being thrown around. I'm not sure how much, if any, playtime he's going to get this season. There are rumors that Toronto FC signed him and a couple of other young homegrown players just to keep them in Toronto instead of going off to CPL teams, but I think Ruddy will definitely, sooner rather than later, become a player in MLS just at 15, especially on this team where you have a designated player winger and like some very good other midfielders in Osorio. It's just a hard task to get him into the lineup. I think we might see him a few times this season as a late substitute, but I don't think we're going to be seeing Ruddy as a regular in Toronto FC's squad. Striker. This is another position where I think Toronto FC has some weakness after left back. It's probably their second weakest spot, especially given how injury prone Altidore has proven to be. Patrick Mullins is the backup. I don't see him starting games. I think if Altidore goes down, we're going to pull what we did last season and Vanny will play Pozuelo at striker. He definitely is a useful MLS player, but he doesn't really have the tools required to be a consistent striker in this league. So, well, yes, we're definitely going to see him thrown in as a sub a lot probably this season. I don't see him starting very much for this team. Next, we have 17-year-old Jaden Nelson. Nelson is another interesting prospect. He played 14 games for TFC2 last season and did not score, which is unfortunate. However, he has 5 goals in 9 games for the Canadian U17 team and was called up to the Canadian national team for the most recent January camp where he played in all 3 games and actually scored a goal for Canada. So this is a 17-year-old with international goal-scoring pedigree on his resume. I think he could surprise some people this season and be potentially a useful substitute striker for Toronto FC. Again, I don't see him starting games, but he could be thrown on late in a couple of games, could potentially score a goal or 2, but I think Jaden Nelson definitely will see MLS action this year. And then Ayo Akinola. Akinola's career started off so promising for TFC. He got into a couple of games in 2018, got into a few games at the beginning of last year and scored in MLS, and then he just kind of disappeared. Didn't really have the impact that I think Greg Vanny wanted to see from him. I don't think he had the impact that anyone really wanted to see from him, and kind of lost his spot in Toronto FC's lineup and was sent down to TFC2 to finish out the season. Again, we may see Greg Vanny try him a couple times at the beginning of the season to see if he has found his footing and can actually be a threat in MLS, but for right now, I don't see Akinola playing that much. Midfielders. Jonathan Osorio. Basically an MLS starter. The fact that 2 of our designated players are attacking midfield type players in Pozuelo and Piatti really hurts his effectiveness in this lineup. Pretty much anywhere else in MLS, Osorio is a guaranteed starter. He is just that good. He had 10 goals in MLS 2 years ago in 2018 on a very bad TFC squad. Had 5 last season. The guy can score. The guy is creative. He has national team pedigree. He's a regular on the Canadian national team. He's one of the better Canadian footballers in the world. He is definitely going to be a starter more times than not this season, I think. Again, I'm just saying that we're probably going to want Delgado playing a more defensive role to start off, but I feel like we could just go full send, 2 more attacking midfielders, 1 more center back midfielder, 2 wingers, and a striker. And in that case, Osorio becomes a starter basically every game. So Jonathan Osorio, if he's on the subs, he's a super sub and getting into every game, but I think we will definitely be seeing him starting quite a bit this year. Also, Nick DeLeon, who had another player who had a fantastic year last year, very useful substitute for Toronto FC. He can play in the midfield, can play right wing, can play right back sometimes if you want him to, can really do anything. He's a very good utility player for TFC, and again, I think he'll be a regular substitute for the squad. And then Noble Okello, another interesting one, young defensive midfielder who has been called up to the Canadian national team before, was actually in the Gold Cup squad last year but didn't play. I think he might be used as a second string CDM until Michael Bradley gets back. So before Bradley comes back, we might see Okello in and out of games a few times. Once Michael Bradley comes back, he'll be the number 3 CDM, and I don't really see him getting into games with Fraser and Bradley ahead of him in the lineup. But I feel like we could be seeing quite a bit of Noble Okello before June, and then once Bradley comes back, I don't think we'll be seeing that much of him unless he really impresses. And then on defense, Laurent Simon was a big part of the playoff run last year while Gonzalez was hurt. 100% the 3rd choice center back. It has to be him. International pedigree with Belgium. He's a great player. He's going to be playing a lot for Toronto FC. Justin Morrow, again, as I said before, has taken a step back with injuries and his age starting to catch up to him. I think we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of him this year, especially as our only natural left back right now. But I think we're going to be starting Aro in the left back position more often than not. Although I think we're going to be seeing a bit of a rotation with those 2 starting at points this season. So Morrow definitely is going to get some starts, definitely going to get some substitute appearances, and is probably going to get a decent amount of playtime this year. Now, Rocco Romeo I have as the 3rd choice. Another 19-year-old, he's a center back, has time with TFC 2. I think he is another interesting prospect that TFC has, and I would like to see him in a couple of games this season. I think I'd rather see someone new than more of nephew, so hopefully Greg Vanny plays Romeo over Zavaleta. But of course, the connection between Zavaleta and Vanny, who really knows at this point? 4th choice defender, I have Zavaleta. We just can't let nephew go. As much as we want to, as much trouble as he causes TFC fans, he's always here, and he will continue to get into some games as a rotation player, I think, this season. Gonna have a couple starts as a rotational player, gonna have a couple of substitute appearances as an extra center back. But I think with the emergence of Romeo and Julian Dunn, I think hopefully we'll be seeing slightly less of Zavaleta this season. And the last choice defender for this team, I have Julian Dunn. Dunn is a prospect name that's been thrown around for a while. Hasn't yet really cracked Toronto FC's lineup. He played 2 games earlier last season for the Reds, but didn't really make an impact. I think, again, just as a younger player who is continuing their development, might get a couple more games this season, but I don't see him being a regular in the squad. So there you have it. This is the lineup that I think Toronto FC is going to be going with, at least to start this season. And if I may be fully honest, for MLS, it's a pretty good one. This team definitely is going to be in the playoffs again. They might just be Supporter Shield contenders again. So it's going to be very exciting seeing Toronto FC go into this season. A lot rides on Josie Altidore's ability to stay healthy, because if he goes down, we are desperately in need of another striker. But if Altidore can stay healthy, this team is a Supporters Shield contender 100%. Even if he does go down, I think Westberg's a good enough goalie, and Mavinga and Gonzalez are a good enough of a back too to keep Toronto FC in a lot of close games. I think that this team has a lot of potential, and honestly, I think that this is the best team Toronto FC has rolled out since 2017 when they won MLS Cup. And once Michael Bradley comes back and slots into this CDM role, oh boy, this is a good team. But until then, it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize the younger players in the midfield, especially Liam Fraser. I am so excited for him to start getting a lot of starts this season. I think Liam Fraser has a lot of potential to be not just an important player for Toronto FC going forward, but for the Canadian national team going forward. So I want to see a lot more of Liam Fraser, and I think seeing more of him is going to be the only good thing that comes out of the Michael Bradley injury. So yeah, that is it for this video. Tell me what you think the Toronto FC lineup is going to look like in the comments. If you like this, hit like. If you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Link is down below in the description, and I will see you next time.